It started when the ground gave way. That's what the foreman said later, voice steady, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the horizon. He was standing over a patch of dry Kansas soil, watching as men in hard hats stared down into the pit that wasn't supposed to be there. It was just supposed to be a well, a new irrigation line for a farm on the edge of Franklin County, 5 miles outside the town of Carver. The land had been in the Wilkes family for generations, flat, predictable, nothing but dust, wind, and wheat for miles. And then, one morning in late August, the earth cracked open and revealed a door. At first, nobody understood what they were looking at. The workers thought they'd hit an old septic tank or a root cellar. The dig rig's auger had punched through clay, then metal, a dull clang that stopped everyone in their tracks. When they cleared the dirt around it, what they uncovered was a large rectangular hatch, steel, no hinges visible, welded seams all the way around, flush with the earth, and no handle. They thought it might have been an old storm shelter. Kansas had plenty of those, but the welds were industrial, not homemade. Too precise, too deliberate. The crew foreman, Jeff Turner, called the county inspector. The inspector called the sheriff. And by the time Sheriff Elaine Grant arrived, a small crowd had already gathered along the fence line, watching. She remembered the heat that day, how it shimmered over the fields, how everything seemed to hum. "Doesn't look like a tank," she said, kneeling by the edge, "more like a container." The weld lines had been burned smooth. Whatever this was, it had been sealed intentionally, and from the inside. Grant ordered the site taped off. Within an hour, deputies set perimeter markers. That night, local news ran a short segment. Possible underground shelter discovered on private farmland near Carver. Authorities are investigating the origin of the structure. Nobody paid much attention until the next morning when the state geologist arrived. Dr. Reeves from the Kansas Geological Survey expected to find a routine shelter or storage vault. But when he lowered a seismic probe around the structure, what he found didn't make sense. There was no recorded foundation, no blueprint in county archives, no evidence of construction on that property dating back more than 70 years. And beneath the door, 16 feet down, was air, an empty void. He looked up at Sheriff Grant and said quietly, "Whatever's under there isn't natural." Over the next few days, the investigation expanded. The Wilkes family, owners of the land, claimed they'd never built or known of any structure on that section. Their grandfather, who'd settled the farm in the 1920s, had left no record of it. When the sheriff requested aerial surveys from the 60s and 70s, none showed any sign of disturbance in the soil. No mounds, no sinkholes, nothing. And yet, the hatch was real, 8 feet by 5, solid steel, and sealed tighter than anything they'd ever seen. Attempts to open it failed. The cutting torch barely scratched the surface. When they tried magnetic imaging, the interior was unreadable, like something was interfering with the signal. That's when the first story spread. A farmhand named Darrell claimed that 2 nights after the discovery, he'd seen light coming from the hole. Not bright, just faint, pale blue, like a flicker behind the metal. Nobody believed him, until another worker, the backhoe operator, said he heard something too. Knocking, 3 slow taps, then silence, followed by 3 more. The men stopped working the site after dark. Sheriff Grant dismissed it as vibration from the machinery, but privately, she started logging the reports. Within a week, 6 different people had claimed to hear something from the hatch, and always the same rhythm, 3 slow knocks. By mid-September, the state had taken over. A crew from the Department of Infrastructure arrived with equipment to excavate the entire section around the hatch. The idea was to expose the structure completely, determine its depth, and if safe, cut it open. They got about 5 feet down before the problems started. First came the smell, like iron and soil but heavier, something metallic and old. Then came the interference. Radios cut out, cell service dropped, GPS trackers failed. The deeper they went, the worse it got. At 12 feet, one of the foremen swore he heard a voice through his headset, a whisper that sounded like his name. The next morning, he quit. By the end of that week, they stopped digging. The official reason, structural instability. The real reason, no one wanted to be near it anymore. Sheriff Grant filed a request to transfer jurisdiction to the State Emergency Management Office. 2 days later, 3 unmarked SUVs arrived from Topeka. The men who stepped out wore no badges, only plain clothes. They set up a perimeter, ordered everyone out, and told the sheriff the site was now federal. Grant wasn't happy about it, but she complied. From that day forward, no one in Carver was allowed within a mile of the well. Locals say that night the power went out across the county for 42 minutes. During that time, farmers near the site reported a deep humming, low and steady, rolling under the ground. One woman said her dishes rattled in the cabinets. Another claimed her cattle refused to go near the eastern pasture again. No one saw lights that night. No one saw trucks leave. By sunrise, the entire dig site was gone, filled in, leveled, fenced off, and the door was buried again. Officially, the site was listed as an abandoned test excavation. Unofficially, Sheriff Grant kept a file in her desk labeled Pine Hollow Door. Inside were photographs, witness statements, and a copy of the geologist's seismic report. The report included one final note written in the margin. Structure appears to extend laterally beyond scanned area, estimated radius 120 feet. That meant whatever the hatch led to wasn't small. It was part of something bigger. Months passed, then spring came. Heavy rains swept through Franklin County, flooding nearby roads and washing debris across the Wilkes property. That's when another discovery was made. A metal fragment, flat, curved, and corroded, was found downstream, wedged in the roots of a fallen oak. Tests confirmed it matched the same alloy as the hatch, meaning part of the structure beneath the field had cracked or shifted. Sheriff Grant called Topeka for follow-up. No one returned her call. Within a week, her case file disappeared from the evidence locker. The clerk swore it had never existed. Today, the Wilkes Farm is gone. The land was sold to a development company with ties to a holding firm out of Chicago. The area is fenced, gated, and marked environmental hazard. Do not enter. But locals still talk. Some say you can hear humming on windless nights. Others say the field glows faintly when it rains. And once, during a lightning storm last summer, a driver passing along Route 17 claimed he saw something impossible. A flash of light in the distance, followed by a perfect square of soil collapsing inward. When rescue crews arrived the next morning, the hole was gone, just flattened earth. But the grass above it was scorched. Official records list the site as non-existent. But those who were there, those who saw the hatch, the welds, the way it was sealed from within, don't forget. Neither did the sheriff. After retiring in 2015, Grant moved to Missouri. She never gave another interview. But in her personal journal, later recovered by her niece, she wrote one final entry about the case. It read, "It wasn't a shelter, it wasn't a tank. Someone tried to keep something in." Nobody knows what that means. The Wilkes land remains closed. No new wells have been drilled within a 5-mile radius since. But once a year, on the anniversary of the discovery, someone leaves a wreath on the fence. No one admits to it, and the tag attached always reads the same 4 words: they shouldn't have dug. Because sometimes what's buried was never meant to be found. And in places like Franklin County, the ground remembers.